Hey everybody, it's Karen Hutton, and I have my winner. Stephen Stevenson is here with us today, folks. He won my little survey contest, I guess you would say, for, I didn't want to say the best answer to my survey, because first of all, hello people, you are freaking amazing. Can I say that? Is that like sort of legit? You guys are amazing. The feedback you all offered, I will thank you for the rest of my life, at least for the next year, for the information you've given me, because I want to play more with you. I want to, do things with you guys and create things, not just paid content, but everything, so that we have a world amongst us. And the only way, and I can do a lot of different things, but the only way to know what y'all want to do is to ask the question, and you guys answered. I can't thank you enough. Stephen is so brave. I admire him so much, because I told him the reason I awarded the photo critique that I made the prize for, the most informative and helpful answers. Stephen was hilarious. First of all, it made me laugh, but he also expressed what I've heard so many people say about their photos, which is they're kind of in this place. They don't know how to take it further. They like to shoot black and white and color and landscape. And how do you make it more, give it more, right, Stephen?
Right.
Except for I should call you Steve, because you said your father used to call you Stephen. So it's Steve Stevenson.
Great. Yep.
So he sent me 2 images, and we're going to talk about those first. And so without further ado, here we go on Steve's photo critique. So Steve, I'm going to start with this one. So this is your black and white image. So what I would like to know, and everybody at home, I don't do photo critiques like everybody else, because you all have enough voices in your head. You don't need me to come along and tell you what to do as well. So what I consider my job to be is to try to understand what it is you want to do with an image, where you feel it, succeeded, where you feel it went flat, and what you could do with it if you wanted to, and then start pointing some directions to give you ideas, not to end up saying, this is a crap picture, or this is a better picture, or this is how you make your photo better, the end, because there's a lot of different ways to do that. So, Steve, what do you think of this? What do you love? What didn't work? What are you doing here? What's the story?
Well, it was taken New Year's Day, 2016, and I originally got up to take a sunrise of the first day of the new year, and as luck would have it, it was cold and foggy and pretty much not good for anything. So I was walking down this road and just happened to see this, and I thought, the leading lines down the road, figured I'd make it black and white because there was not much color in the scene anyways. And it's okay. I like the leading lines of the road, but it just needs a little something extra, that like the contrast maybe, or the sky is kind of washed out. So I was hoping to get some tips on how to maybe bring those to life a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I would agree with you. Just based on, so I say I agree with you on, your assessment. If what you wanted was to show the leading lines, like for you, where's the story? It's like, here it is, it's a morning, it's bleak. Okay. Then you have to wait, let me roll the tape back one step further. What I find with a lot of people is they'll have an idea, a general idea, and then they take a general photo. So to me, I see what you're saying and I see what you're after, but for me, it's not specific enough. Like, your choices have to be so specific and so focused that we cannot miss the point unless you want us to, but even that has to be a specific choice. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. What I was hoping for was at the end of the road, it sort of blends into the fog. So I just wanted to, it's a road that just sort of, I don't know, leads into somewhere, but not quite sure where.
Okay. Do you work in Lightroom or Photoshop?
I work in Lightroom and Photoshop and on one.
Okay. So I tend to work, I don't work in Lightroom at all. I tend to work in Photoshop. And as luck would have it, I have it in Photoshop. And if with some luck, I can make this bigger, but it doesn't want to become bigger. But anyway, so here we are. So let's play. I just want to see how big this image size is so I don't do something crazy with this crop. So you're going to direct me a little bit. And why are we not, the keyboard shortcuts were not working. All right, that'll work, except I want that to be there. Alrighty, so you are talking about, I don't know why it's doing that little craziness over there on the side, which you probably see.
Yep.
Huh. I can honestly say I've never seen that before. Why are we doing that? Let me just see what happens if I do this, because there we go. I want to see if that bar on the left would go away. Does this feel closer? Do you, now how married to vertical are you? Was being vertical part of it?
I think in this one, vertical was part of it. Yeah, because there wasn't much to either side, just farmers' fields and then the sky. So just, you know, the road sort of tapering into the middle. And
so I'm going to undo what I just did and say, so the main action for you was the leading line and this right here then, is that correct?
That's correct.
So first of all, knowing what I just said about specific choices, does something come to mind already about what you could have done photographically that would have helped?
Perhaps shorten up on the sky a little bit.
Well, I would say either step closer or zoom in more.
Okay.
And I'm just doing I'm just zooming in just to see what happens if we do that. It wants to go horizontal. So it's a conundrum here with this shot, because we can talk about the black and white here in a second, but if what you were going for was this kind of mystical, magical thing, you have some options. One is to come in a little closer so that the road disappearing is disappearing because it's a road that's disappearing, not because your subject is so small it disappears because we can't see it.
Okay.
Because in the original, the problem is the story becomes whatever is the most visible.
Right.
So here the story is this kind of messy looking foreground and this sky that you don't like. So then the subject is here. So to me, first and foremost, better choices. Like you said, oh, that's cool. And you saw it in your mind, but you did not see it in the camera. And I'm not like criticizing you. I'm saying this is really common. A lot of people go, oh, I know what this will be. I know what it should be. And this is the feeling, snap. Instead, take a minute, kind of go, all right, now, am I going to make it so the sky is what it is, right? You can try and make it something else later, but if there's not enough contrast to begin with, how much processing did you do on this?
Not a heck of a lot, just change it to black and white. And then on this one, I was just trying to brighten up the ice a little bit in the ditches. And then that's pretty much it.
Okay. So how do you feel about these things?
Yeah, they could go.
Right. And how do you feel about, if you're looking at leading lines, how do you feel about this one being bent and curved and that being straight? Was that intentional?
Yeah. The curve part, I don't know if it was just a bad day on the line painting crew or what, but it's a mess, but it just sort of, but I could easily do without it. So.
I'm just thinking out loud. This is what I feel. I'm so visual. I have to actually see. I think you should have stood in a different place, but I wanted to use this image because, like I say, it's really common. People go, that isn't the picture I had in my mind. And I'm like, well, did you look at what was really there, or did you shoot what was in your mind? Because in your mind is important. And see,
Hmm.
people ask me all the time, how do you know, like, do you see it done in your mind when you take the picture, or do you figure it out later on the computer? And I always say it's a little bit of both, but you have to take that extra minute um, to go, all right, what's there? What can I use? What am I going to have to fix? And is it too much trouble? Or
Hmm.
are the bones there and all I have to do is maybe add some mystical clouds or, a little After Effects or whatever? Is
Right.
this closer to what you were, because this feels like what you were saying, closer.
That is closer. And now that I look at it, I think you might be right. If I had walked a little bit further, just past the curve there,
Yeah.
concentrated strictly on the straight road itself, it probably would have been
Right. And so
harder.
this is for next time. We can't go back and redo this moment, and I'm not going to throw it away and say it's a bad picture or anything like that, because there's so much to learn. So
Hmm.
when you want to do leading lines, what you have to watch out for in the foreground is that you have a really strong element that wants to take all the attention, which this line does.
Right.
So if you walk up to here, then you don't have to necessarily telephoto as much, which could be good. You'd still have your ice.
Hmm.
This is the more interesting building right here. You get rid of those pylons. And then you can play with where you're holding your camera, whether it's at eye level or down or up or whatever. I don't know that it would have made such a difference here. And then you can decide, okay, I've got this sky that isn't performing. Do I want to use that as fog, and do I want to add some foggy elements here to make it more mystical? That's always a
Right.
possibility.
Yeah.
So just in terms of composition, that is always worth thinking about, and it means taking a little extra moment and taking your choice much further. Like, don't have a general idea and I think I got it. Really feel into it and go, what is it? What's the story? What are you trying to say to me? Where's the story, and where does it feel? Where does it, like, I look through the lens, I look at this, I zoom in, I zoom out, and then I go, there it is. Then
Hmm.
but that takes a little extra time, and it takes questioning yourself as to where the story is, and absolutely what elements you need and don't need.
Okay.
You could conceivably, it's going to make it not so vertical anymore, but
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know if that's the story, because you liked the vertical, but that does get rid of some of the sky, and it brought us
Yeah.
into the
And
thing.
that's actually closer to what, now that you mention it, what I was thinking of when I took
Right.
it. So
So
yeah.
this is what I find in photo critiques a lot of times is, and that's why I ask a lot of questions, is because I can see what I think you're thinking, but how conscious of it are you? And so
Right.
the questions help me determine, all right, so what were you seeing? So therefore, if I back out of the crops, so that's where you started, and
Hmm.
then we ended up way in here. Maybe not quite
Right.
that far, but there.
Yeah.
So that's where you need to take yourself when you want to create like an artistic kind of a journey, like misty vibe, so to
Hmm.
speak. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes.
So then in terms of the black and white, I agree with you. I think your eye for black and white, you're a little let's put it this way. So the beginning of my photo career was in black and white, and there's about, let's see, I think there are literally, it's either 32 or 36 shades of black. Like, that's a lot.
Hmm.
And sometimes what people do to great effect is only use a very narrow band of the black and shades of gray, and then it ends up kind of muted. But it needs to be a choice. And I feel as though the only reason I bring it up is I see this same toning in the black and white photos of yours that I saw, which makes me think, like, my personal opinion is I like more contrast. I like deeper blacks and
Yeah.
cleaner grays. I don't like muddy. That's personal. So I'm not going to put that on you and say that's what you should do. But again, you want to be on purpose and purposeful about your choice of what kind of black and white is going to tell the story. I had a friend who I'm helping get to be a better photographer, and he has a way that he started off liking to process, which was really grungy. I mean, like to the extreme. And I said to him, okay, that's a choice. It's like, I hate it myself. I didn't like what he did, but that doesn't matter what I like. He liked it. So I'm like, okay, what story are you telling with it? And why are you using that? And why are you using it on every single photo you do? It is such a strong choice. You've got to decide how to apply it and when and where. So now he's learned how to use it more in certain subjects and even more in certain parts of an image, and have more variety and have the image tell its own story instead of your super, imposition of your ideas on it. So I go back to yours, and I'm going to do just a little something. I didn't do this ahead of time on purpose. I'm just going to throw on one of, well, it's Google. I don't know I don't know if the people who bought the Google, the old Nick photo.
Mm-hmm.
I love their Pro Contrast. It's still what I like to use. You could do this in Luminar or anywhere. I'm just going to raise the contrast a little bit. It was a flat day, I realize. So the trick with contrast, of course, is it's going to show your smear on the lens and so on and so forth. But it would also brings up your ice a little more, just creates a little more dynamic. And that may or may not be the vibe you're after. But I think personally that a little more contrast brings this to life more.
Right. Yep.
Cool. All right. Without belaboring that, let's go back over to, actually, I've got this on the screen here. You can see that okay?
Yes.
This was in Barbados?
This was in Barbados, yes.
Did you go on vacation?
We were actually on a cruise, and that was one of the stops, and it was another rainy day. As you know, you don't have much choice when you're on a cruise. You take what you get. So
right.
We went on a tour, and the bus stopped here. We had about an hour, and it was pouring rain, and then with like minutes to go, it stopped raining. The clouds lifted a bit, so you could actually see into the valley a bit. So this was a quick shot. It wasn't really have time to set it up and anything, so I just sort of did a quick pano, and got out of Dodge.
What kind of pano did you do? Did you do the in-camera kind?
And no, I just multiple images and then stitched them together.
What do you shoot with?
This was shot on a Nikon D610.
Okay.
And I've just switched over to Fuji X-T2, so that's my new toy.
You enjoying it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a good camera. Okay, so tell me about this. Tell me why you gave it to me to look at.
Well, I like the mist, and I realize now one of the things I probably should have done was did vertical panos, because then I could get more of the grass below and whatever, but it was shot horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like the contrast between, the trees and the grass, and then you got the cloudy, misty trailing over the valley there. So I was just trying to bring those palm trees to life a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so why did you want me to look at it?
To me, it's still a little flat, and I just wondered if what else could possibly be done to this to, like you say, put it over the edge, give it that little bit of oomph.
Well, shooting it vertical pano would have been good, because then you'd have a little more at the bottom. Right. So I'm forming my words here. So pop in what way? Like what? Okay, pop is such a general term. Yep. Pop can mean a lot of different things. What does it mean to you? Like if it could what would you do with this? How would you want it to feel? Because see, here's the thing. I always talk about the, feeling, and people look at me like, oh, you're talking about feeling all the time. And I'm like, well, if you create an image and you go to the trouble of creating an image and then you want people to see it, right? Whether it's a print or online, if people don't feel anything, they're not going to bond with it. They're just going to go next. So
Right.
so the whole feeling thing is really important. And the problem is, just as in a singing voice or a musical instrument, if you don't feel it, it ain't coming through your thing. It ain't coming through your music, so to speak. So that's why I always go back to, what were you after? What was the feeling? Like you've described, yeah, well, it was just kind of this moment. Okay, then it was a journalistic shot, in which case it's fine. Or was it something else?
Yeah, I was just sort of captivated by, the trees framing the valley there. So I just wanted to, like the palm leaves or fronds, whatever you call them. I
Yep.
just wanted them to sparkle a bit more because there was some sunshine poking through, not a lot. And then, in the valley, there's, different shades of green there. So I just, try to emphasize like you say, the contrast maybe a little bit between the dark greens and the light greens and
Right.
gray
Okay.
skies.
Okay. So, all right. When I'm presented with a scene like this, even if I'm rushed, what I try to do is work it, even if I have to do it fast. And in fact, I task myself sometimes with seeing fast and shooting fast because, like you say, you had 15 seconds to get this shot and to run back to the boat. I'm exaggerating, but right?
Yeah.
But you can do a lot if you are used to this whole idea of, I love this feeling. I love the trees framing the valley, and you make these decisions that you made about, I'm going to use these trees over here to anchor this side. I'm going to use these over here to anchor this side. You made a decision to put this in there, which isn't bad. It's kind of interesting. However, shoot vertical panos next time because you're missing. We're a little cramped on space here.
Right.
But that's okay. You've already got that. Now, that's great. How long does that take? 5 seconds of your 15 seconds. Now what? What's the rest of the story? So I submit that I went too fast. So here we are. So I call this the general shot. Your pano, this is the whole thing. And then what I want to walk away with is as many points of view as I can possibly manage. And I'm not saying you didn't do this. So I'm using you as like school.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So rather than just take this and run, which a lot of landscape photographers do, I'll look through their portfolios, or they'll come to a workshop and they'll say, well, or I'll look at their work ahead of time. And they've all made these really general decisions. So this comes back to what I said about the black and white, which is specific choices and strong choices. So you get your general shot. Here we are. Next, you can go, wow, I just love the interplay of, oops, sorry, I hit my, no, that's not what I wanted. All right. My computer is just not playing nice. So then you can play with fronds. You can play with fronds and like here, of course, you got a messed up fence, but you can start playing with lines and decide, gee, am I going to do anything? Actually, now I'm sitting here looking, wow, look at the little town out there. Am I going to do anything with line and fronds? And in fact, what I'm going to do rather than zoom is actually play with a little cropping, and then I'll put it back. So you have little scenes. So I like to chunk things down. Now, maybe that's good. Maybe it's not. Maybe we like just the fronds. You need a telephoto for this, of course, but I always go with one. And shoot about, I don't know, I task myself with at least 3 different ways. And usually I can walk away with more than 3 if I do it that way. So you have then a variety pack of your general one. Even this side is interesting. which tells like the mid story.
Right.
Then you can zoom in and get a little bit of the anchoring of the trunks with the fronds. You know, you could, I'm not saying you would do this in post. I'm saying you do this with a telephoto at the time. I
Right.
don't know that that's so interesting, but if you moved it a little more over to the left, you know, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
So you put on your telephoto and you start looking and you look for these little compositions. You start breaking down the scene into all the interesting parts. Zoom this up a little more so that you walk away with a variety pack of the thing. Because it's kind of depressing to then go, all right, well, this is good, but how would I add a little magic? So one of my favorite little magic tricks, and the reason why I wanted to do this. Now, I use Aurora HDR Pro a lot, and very seldom ever do I do HDR. I just like the tools. And what I'm curious about, because again, I didn't do this, this is just how I experiment, is, let's just look at the top. And what happens if we, a little more contrast. Now I'm killing the trees, but I love stormy weather. So I didn't think, when you said this was a bad day, I'm like, it is? I kind of like it. So then
Well,
I might use,
day in paradise.
sorry?
I said it was a bad day in paradise. So
Yeah. Oops, that's too much. So maybe I go at, I don't know, something a little more like that. And then, you know, you finesse it through the clouds a little bit. You can always use Vivesa to brighten these up if you want. So that adds a little bit of something to the sky. I'm doing this really, really, really fast. Being careful that as you brush this out, you're not like making some weird halo around your tree. So that's one way.
Yeah.
Another thing sometimes I do, if I'm curious, I play with light a lot. So another thing I do, can you see this tool? Can you see that I'm doing the Nick thing?
Yeah.
So I'm choosing in Color Effects Pro, I'm choosing midnight. Email. So if I forgot to turn the notifications off. So you see, this isn't like, wow, that's not too cool looking, is it? But let's bring it in. It's a way of experimenting with light and to see whether, so we're at 20%, so I want to go 40%. To see whether if you direct, especially if you have some sort of strongish light source, you can go like, if you say, well, okay, I'm going to say the light is up here in the upper right corner. So it's going to hit this side of the tree first. And it's going to hit, that's a little, well, it's not actually so bad. And it's going to hit over here. And I'll just sit here and I'll fiddle around and go, all right, what would it hit? Maybe this side. That's too much. So then I go down to 20% on this side. This is probably a little more shadowed. This side's probably more shadowed, and this. And if I've done one of my more detailed shots, I can literally zoom in and go, all right, oh, look, it's going to hit there. So let's make it more, let's make it stronger on these little tree tops and a little stronger here. And I'm just actually going to come in, come on. Computer thinks it's doing a lot right now. It doesn't even know the meaning of doing a lot. You lightweight machine, you. Okay. So you can like choose where, okay, so the light's going to hit there and it's hitting there and it's hitting right here. And, just kind of brush it in little, as you can see, whoa. As you can see, I'm going. This is at 20%. This is up here is at 20. So you start creating your own landscape of light.
Mm-hmm.
That is one way to make things pop a little bit more, is to create dynamic that way. This is really super fast. But do you see where I'm going with it?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Now, let's say you go, wow, I'm not saying that I really love my balance here, because this actually takes me a while to do, but it's part of why people often say, well, what did you do to it? And I'm like, I played with the light because that was fun. And then let's say, for instance, well, I like the balance of everything, but maybe it's too dark, right? So then you can come in here to the opacity of this layer and you can just brighten it up, and it'll keep more or less the same relationship of the areas I brushed out, but the whole thing comes brighter.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can play with it that way. Then let's say, people in the survey were saying, well, I'd like to see more of how you process. And I'm like, well, I do stuff like this. Then I go, okay, now I want to see, there's another tool I like, which is Alien Skin Exposure 3. I like plugins because they give me cool ideas, and then you can just totally just change everything about them. It's really fun. So if I go over here, hold down, I'm on a Mac, so if I hold down my Option key and press the little hamburger menu up in the upper right of the layer menu, you get merge visible. If you hold this key down, it'll merge visible but still leave your layers. If you don't do that, it'll compress all of them. And that's what Alien Skin likes to work on, as a nice clean layer. So what Alien Skin's really good at, which I find cool, is that it handles, I really like the way it handles color. Like this is the last thing I did, which is a GAF 500, warm, and I modified it. But see, just that suddenly kind of gives it a little something, right? And it's picking up the light in different ways. So that's one option. Another, we got ectochrome. Let's see, what else would I look at? You can also look at film. They're really good at their film simulations, better than most. This is Kodak Ektar, which is another kind of interesting approach. Portrait's too much like the normal. Let's see, if you want to go really crazy, some of the aged ones are just weird looking. If you like that effect. The other thing about Alien Skin is, let's see, I liked, where were we that I actually kind of liked? We were on this. I'll show you one other trick. And so, like, if you think the green is too bright or whatever, the most recent version of Alien Skin Exposure 3 gives you this whole HSL, hue, saturation, luminance menu, which is terrific. So let's do that. And then, this day is kind of atmospheric, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a lot of stuff in the air. So I'm waiting. Another thing you can do, if you're familiar with Photoshop, is throw in a fill layer or adjustment layer, this little circle down here in the lower right.
Yep.
Pull in a solid color. Let's do blue. I don't know why I like blue. And that looks terrible, doesn't it? Until you go blending mode screen. Now you can play with it's a little atmosphere. You may like that, or you may like this. And what I usually do is, because blue and gold are complementary, I'll go through this again, solid color, and I go really bright, that color, whatever you call that color. And then I'm going to run the opacity all the way down to 0, blending mode, multiply, and then only bring in just a little tiny bit. Now, it does a thing. So I mean, 13% is a lot. This one can take it. Now, then you get to decide, well, that's different. So all I'm doing is giving you some ideas. You said
Yeah.
pop, gave me a few little ideas. This is in post-processing. Then you can go, do you like it better? Maybe you like it better like that. Maybe you like it better with just that. Sometimes when a photo gets a little dark, but I like everything happening, but the values are a little bit dark, I find this will bring it up to where I want it. And of course, you can make it blue or gray or whatever you want. This adds a little warmth. But either way, it's like there's just something in the air when you do this. It isn't quite so, although this doesn't look so digital. But you know how some photos just look really clean and digital and you just kind of want to punch them? At least that's how I feel. I want to dirty it up. I want to give it some atmosphere. I want to give it a 3D feel. That's the sort of thing I'll experiment with, is bringing in those adjustment layers. So does that make sense?
It does. Yes, that's very well. Yeah, I like that.
You like that? I think
I do.
that's enough. I think I'm going to stop my screen share, and I think we're back. So my hope is that in the form of a photo critique, more than saying, well, you should have done this or you should have done this or that's a lousy picture, which I hear people do. And I hear people tell people, for your instructors, tell people how they should take the picture. It really, of course, there are techniques. Of course, people think I don't have technique. I have a boatload of techniques. I just refuse to go down that rabbit hole until we've had the conversation of, well, what are you after? And why didn't you get it? And what are you missing, within you that would help you get that better photo so that we don't have to thrash it to death technically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
I probably have a million questions, but they're lost in here somewhere. So
they're lost in space.
Well, the space between my ears. Yeah.
Well, you can have a moment if one. You'll probably think of it later, I'm sure. But
probably. No.
Well, I guess my main thing is, if it made sense what I said, which hopefully it did. Tell me the first thing you're going to do different the next shot you go out and take.
Spend a bit more time and actually look at what I'm taking a picture of and try to form the picture in my head before I get to the lens, and then sort of just grab the same picture, whether you have to like zoom with your feet, as they say, or whatever, and just practice, getting the shot that you want and get rid of the garbage that's detracting from it.
Yeah. In camera.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a purist that way. I definitely believe I'll crop. I have no problem cropping, but I don't know. I grew up in an era where, you had to get it in camera, and that's
right.
how I learned to do it. Where I've learned the value of it in the digital world is I've had occasions, many occasions for my work to be blown up really big. And the more pixels that are in that original file, the better, because, if you've done too much cropping, you really can't blow those photos up so big. So that's another reason. But also, here's another more hidden reason, and this is for not just for you, because I know you understand all this, but for anybody listening, one of the reasons to make an effort to get the shot in camera isn't purist, it isn't technical, it isn't because it's better, it's because it makes you take your time. It makes you feel into the shot. It forces you to consider what you're doing and to look in every single corner, to make a decision, to get specific about every element, to feel what you feel, and to take that moment to have it go like it's like a Geiger counter, the metal, it goes, and then all of a sudden, it's like, there it is. It's a feeling, whether it's your heart leaps or your stomach goes, ooh, or you gasp, or you go, oh, like that's it, or whatever your physical response is. Getting it right in camera almost makes you take the time to get that. And you walk away knowing that you have the shot. and
Hmm.
also knowing how much work you're going to have to put into it to make it take it that extra distance. Because sometimes I do that. Sometimes I know this is perfect, I got it, but I know I'm going to add some, some of
Yeah.
the mystical stuff that I like to do, but I don't want to do too much because I don't want to sit in front of the computer.
Yeah.
So
I think
there's that.
that's probably my biggest question is how do you know what's too much? So I guess that's just by trial and error, I guess, right?
Okay, good. It's an excellent question. So what I usually tell people, and this is, I go by feel. So I'm going to start with what I do, and then I'm going to tell you the advice I give people. So I have this whole thing about going by feel, what I just said about, oh, that's it. Because I'm so clear about what the vibe is and what the story is, and I know when it lands because I can feel it the eagle has landed. It's
Right.
definite. So there's that, which tells me. Now, sometimes in my own processing, I'm like, I love it. I think I'm done. But just in case I'm not, I'm going to go that extra distance and then compare it with what I have here and see if it went too far based on that feeling. So what I tell people is when you're not sure, it really comes down to knowing what the story is. Now, what story, what do I mean by that? It could be, you know, it could be very specific, like this character said to that character or whatever, or it could be the part in the symphony where the music swells and everything resolves, the chordal changes are like resolve and everyone bursts into tears. It could be that story. It could be the story of spooky music, the part of
Hmm.
the story where and then you know he snatched her or whatever. That's
Yeah.
pretty dire, but so it goes back again to taking your time and understanding what the story is, so that when there's a story, when you think of a part in a movie, and oftentimes when you think of a part in music, you see something, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or you have a vibe which comes with colors and tones and amount of light and part of day and all those kinds of things. So your story then, actually, if you take your time, it actually comes with a lot of the accoutrement that you need. So you start your processing process knowing what it is, what the story is, and what the elements were that you shot for. It's just like in your I'm going to go back to this. Let's see, what am I going to go back? Just going to go back to Photoshop for a minute. It's like in the beginning, you had, this was your shot. So the bones were there, except for
Hmm.
you should have shot vertical. But the
Yeah.
bones are there. And I just messed around a bit. I didn't do an awful lot. So, your story, the wind and the fronds and the green and the mist and the clouds, and you got it, but the light's flat. So what we did
Right.
was give it a little more, it's a choice. It's one of many you could make. But what I did was I gave it that saturated feeling that you get when there's a lot of moisture in the air. When
Yeah.
there's a lot of moisture in the air, everything gets really saturated. The camera doesn't always see it that way, but that's what happens. And then as clouds pass over the sun, you see there's a little more light, there's a little less, because that's where the sun's coming through the clouds. And you see it a little brighter on this side and on some of these leaves and things, because that's how the sun is bouncing around all the different surfaces. I made the clouds a little more pronounced because they're such a major player.
Right.
And then should you so choose, you can give it even more atmosphere, or you
Yeah.
choose different colors. So, and I wanted to once again show before and after, not that it's so dramatic, but it's a vibe. So when you're
Right.
standing there, if you know that, you're going for something like that. Does that
Yeah.
make, does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does. Yes.
I always ask that question. Does that make sense? Like you're 5 years old? Of course it makes sense. I know it makes sense. But all right. So back to your question, how do you know when it's enough? Does that give you more of an idea of how to plan in advance?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
it's not just whacking around in the dark and hoping for the best. It really isn't.
Right.
The other question I get asked a lot, and I saw it in the survey as well, was, do you know when you take the shot exactly how you're going to process it and like what tools you're going to use and so on and so forth? Or do you just figure it out as you're doing it? And that ties into what we just talked about, because I always know the vibe. I always know the feeling that I have and the feeling that it seems to convey. So I start with a good, part way there. What I also stay open for is, and I start that way, and if in the course of processing it goes to an even cooler place, great. But I know, because I've got it really, grounded in my gut. I feel it. And I know sometimes I'll surprise myself by trying some technique, and then all of a sudden I go, ooh, I can get a little shivery, It's a real visceral process for me. But I always start off knowing what it was I was thinking and feeling, and wanting how I want to move others too.
Right.
So it's not in a vacuum. It's very related to my audience and me and what I'm trying to say or share or express. It's always a conversation.
Right. Otherwise, why would you do it, right?
Right? I know, exactly. I mean, if you want to have the conversation be in your head, knock yourself out. For most of us, we're wanting to move people. We want people to go, oh, I feel that. I see what you're saying. Which, by the way, I've always loved that. I've taught actual voice for many, many years, and still do voiceovers. And I always love that thing where, and where the bridge between voice and expressive voice, and why I talk about it in photography a lot, is think about this, that when you explain something well and you tell the story so somebody really gets it and feels it, they say, I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's so many lines like that travel between those two disciplines, that I see what you're saying in this image, because you got enough of it in there. It was a little harder to see what you were saying in the black and white one. That's why I had to ask you more questions. But this one I got. So you saw it too, and you shot for it, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, this turned out longer than I told you it would. I hope you got some value out of it.
Yes, I did. That's amazing. I thank you for that.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome. I thank you for your help in, with your answers, and all of you, again, going back out to the rest of you, total shout out to every single one of you. And hopefully I will put it all to good practice and create things that we all just love and can obsess over and have fun with this year. So I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and see you around the horn.